Okay. Hattie, thank you so much for allowing me to interview you. We've been talking about doing this for probably since I reincarnated my show since I've started. So I really appreciate your time. I want you to introduce yourself, but I start every show. My show's called Are You Okay? I start by asking everyone if they are okay. Like, are you doing well?
I,
What's the update?
I
Ah, how did you freeze? You're totally frozen.
I think you may have froze.
Okay, you froze for me too. We're back, I think.
Wait, now I can't hear you.
Oh
What up? Wait, is this
no.
me? Oh wait, now I can hear
Why?
you. Now I can hear you. Oh my
I
God.
can hear
Okay, now I can hear
you
you.
and I hear you clearly.
Okay, now I can hear you. Now I think we're good.
Okay, so we'll restart and you can tell me if you are okay. Or am I okay? Is our connection okay? I don't know.
I am okay. I'm feeling very okay.
Good.
More than
Glad.
okay.
Okay, good. So do you want to just start off by introducing yourself and who you are, and then just kind of like talking about your relationship to music?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Hattie Lindert. I am a writer. I work at a publication called the AV Club, which covers a lot of film and television and entertainment and music and internet culture. I'm a staff writer there, and I live in Brooklyn, New York. Um, and my relationship to music, I do a lot of writing and reporting on music and music culture. But I also am just a lifelong music fan. And it is my passion and one of my favorite things about being alive to experience new music. So I am constantly kind of listening to new stuff and checking new stuff out. And I also do some music freelancing for some different blogs as well. Finals blog, awesome blog, definitely would rec checking it out. There's some awesome stuff on there. And also NewYorkStateMusic.com, which is another fabulous blog run by Pete Mason, who is amazing. Um, but yeah, I spend a lot of time pretty much every day listening to or thinking about or writing about or reporting on music.
I love that. Can you talk about what is your favorite type of story to cover?
Um, I would say I love to kind of look at sort of cultural trends or like things that are kind of going on that are sort of bubbling up in kind of fan communities or conversations online, or just like news events that I see being in conversation with each other. So I think a lot of questions about, for example, AI right now have been very, very interesting and how different artists are reacting to AI. I was just thinking recently about Grimes having been very on board with it when other artists have been understandably pretty nervous, and labels have definitely also been nervous. Um, but yeah, I would say sort of like cultural things that are going on and kind of causing a lot of conversation. But I
Mm.
love covering shows. That's something I used to do for New York State Music a lot. Actually, in Vermont, I would cover shows at Higher Ground. So I covered like some great ones like Gogol Bordello there. They were amazing. Sylvan Esso there was
Oh my
amazing.
God.
Cat, like just like really fun. And I always found that um, especially at higher ground, like when I would go and cover a show, I would usually like go by myself and go sober with my camera and like my notepad. And I would always like meet people and make friends. And it was just a really nice experience, a great way to interact with an artist. I love live music. So yeah, I would say those two are probably my favorite. And anytime I get to like interview or talk to an artist that I love, that's like the scariest thing in the world. But it also feels really, really good. And is like when it can start to feel like sort of a meeting of the minds in any kind of way, like that's really exciting to feel like you're making someone feel seen in what they're creating. Like that understanding, I think, is really beautiful and powerful. And to feel understood and being understood, like simultaneously from my end, is really cool. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so cool. Do you have a favorite artist you've interviewed?
A favorite artist I've interviewed. So last summer, right when I moved to New York, I got to interview Jockstrap, who are this EDM duo from the UK that are comprised of Taylor Sky and Georgia Ellery. Georgia Ellery is also a member of Black Country New Road, which is an incredible band. But I just really, really love her. I love their music. It was the first, and it was like the first time I had really interviewed and sat down in person with an artist that like I knew and was aware of like just from being a fan. And it was just a complete like special starstruck experience, and they were so kind and so thoughtful and so interesting. And I was able to find a home for that with Finals Blog, which was a blast because I got to pretty much publish it just with a slight introduction and then just transcribed, which was fun to kind of just
So cool.
that. But yeah, that has probably been my favorite so far.
So I feel like I'm asking you all of these like very specific questions. Usually when I interview people, it's like much more conversational, but I have so many questions for you
Oh,
and like
absolutely.
your career. Like I just am I'm so interested in what you do, I guess. I know for me, because I interview a lot of artists. It's definitely not in the same capacity, but I do interview a lot of artists, and like I can sometimes struggle to separate my like fandom from the interview. And I'm wondering if that's something that you are able to do. Do you lean in? Are you like showing your cards when that's the case? Are you able to like how do you approach interviewing someone who like all of their music and you are a fan, or maybe it's the opposite, right? Like maybe you hate their music for some reason. I don't know why, but what is that like for you as like a consumer, and then also it's a part of your career and your job?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a really salient point. Like it is very hard. It is very hard to navigate both things, especially I think I honestly haven't come into a scenario yet in my career where I've had to sit down with and interview an artist who I really, really didn't like their music. I honestly kind of love reading interviews that are a little not necessarily tenser, but I really admire an interviewer and a writer who's really able to kind of have the know-how and have the like right way to go around it to sort of take someone to task and kind of create the conditions for a different kind of conversation than we see. Like, I definitely think a lot of journalism does turn into fan service sometimes. But for me, yeah, I, I have a hard time like I think when someone I know is like well known or like I respect them or I see them as a public figure, like I immediately have this feeling of like I don't want to like be all in their face, I guess, or like ask them to take a
Mm.
selfie or like stuff like that, or sort of just like be really intense with them because I kind of want to create something a little bit more I don't know, like more of a buildings block relationship, like make them feel comfortable in talking about
Mm.
guiding a conversation, but making them feel comfortable in talking about what they want to talk about and get to the places that they want to get to on their own. Because I think it's really hard, especially from a fan perspective, where all have like so many thoughts on a specific song or so many thoughts on a specific album or technique they have, that I have all my ideas about it. But if I ask a question that's like immediately placing all of my ideas on them, like the answers can be very
Mm.
limited. So I've definitely had to learn over time, and it's an ongoing process as well. Just how to like ask questions that are specific enough that it's like clear that like I understand what they're coming from and I'm not like a newbie to their work and just like walking in having read about them for 10 minutes online, but also that are open ended enough that kind of allow them to sort of tell me, okay, like what are your influences? Like I can say what I think your influences are, but that's a lot less interesting than what would come to mind for you kind of without that guiding lane. So yeah, I think always trying to keep that in mind. And yeah, I guess that would probably be the main thing for me. And I usually try not to ask for pictures, but every once in a while, I need to get a picture with somebody.
Yeah, 100%.
I interviewed Taylor Lautner yesterday for work, and I had to get a picture with him.
I was gonna like lightly bring it up at the end because I did see those pictures. Also, when I was researching you, which is funny that I am researching you, but I did, I do my work for every person, whether or not I know them or not. But it's like now the first picture that pops up when you search for Emmy, I think.
So funny.
Do you want to talk briefly about that? I don't know. I doubt anyone who's listening to my radio show doesn't know who Taylor Lautner is. But if they don't, do you want to say who Taylor Lautner is and then why you got a picture with them recently?
Yes. So Taylor Lautner, known in my day as a young teen as Taylor Hotner,
Mm.
he played the character of Jacob Black in the iconic book and movie series Twilight. He was sort of a important corner in the love triangle between one Bella Swan and Edward
Yes,
Cullen.
yes, yes, of course, of
You
course.
spoiler alert, a werewolf, which I guess it's been so long that it shouldn't really be a spoiler alert anymore. But he was a hot hottie when I was at a burgeoning, budding period of my life when hot hotties like that were very culturally important and were something to talk about and
Yes.
be very aware of and see posters of and be obsessed with. So seeing him now as an adult and being in a room with him in real life was very, very cool and very exciting. And I interviewed him for work because he came into my office. My publication, the AV Club, is run by a company called Geo Media that also owns other brands like Jezebel and Gizmodo and Kotaku, this awesome video games publication, and Jalopnik, this amazing sort of like cars, auto, motor publication. And so I work in an office with a lot of different writers. So oftentimes we'll have guests or celebrities or musicians or artists or public figures come in to sort of do a different series of interviews with the different sites. And so he came in for that with his wife, who is also named Taylor Lautner.
Taylor, yes.
He, nay Taylor Dome, but now Taylor Lautner, and she was lovely. She is a like mental health advocate and COVID. She was like a former COVID nurse, but now they have this mental health podcast that they do together called The Squeeze that is very cute and sweet.
Amazing.
And so I spoke to them about that and obviously snuck in some Twilight and fame and fandom questions in the same interview because he also has talked on the podcast about that experience of fame in that way when people were like grabbing at him in public and they were having to get locked down with security guards was definitely crazy. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I can't even imagine like because that fandom was like at a different level, like you said, like really culturally relevant. And I can't even think like because pop culture has diversified in such a way, I think because of like social media platforms, probably like TikTok, right? Where like the TikTok that you see is completely different than the TikTok that I see. Like the algorithm has really like broadened our horizons, I guess. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think this is probably my like biased perception, but like I don't know a Taylor Lautner today, you know, like now there's like 100, I feel like, you
Yeah.
know, like over sexualized fandom style, like, but it's so much more unique where at that time I can't imagine what it was like to be one of those like five people in the moment at that time that like those were the only people, you know what I'm saying, like of that generation, right? Obviously I'm talking about like a sub generation, but I can't even imagine because there's really nothing to compare it to today. I think I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I completely agree. And it's like, I also feel like you're so right about like the conditions of the culture were so perfect to kind of create this like perfect storm of like really intense like voyeurism and also just like I feel like people aren't as into like
Yes.
be really like brazen stuff now as they used to be. Like that was the era of like the shirtless model outside Abercrombie and Fitch, like
Mm-hmm.
welcoming you in for back to school shopping and like Victoria's Secret fashion shows and like Tumblr, like softcore porn all over the internet. Like it's like there was definitely a certain, and I also now I can say maybe I'm wrong and this is just my bias because maybe it's just because I was in horny pubescence area at that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, horny pubescence period of my life, adolescence at that point in time. But it definitely felt like there was a certain the way that a sex symbol got created and kind of held up, especially for like a kind of teeny bopper. Um, is different now, because the only comparable thing I can really think of is the way people go crazy for Harry Styles, but that to me is not even the same. Like, I don't know if it's
Agreed.
from the same place as like a
Yeah, it's so interesting because the idea of like the binary in general and like gender has really like has flown a lot more, which I think is fantastic. But it is really interesting. Like it's almost like that idea swelled before it broke, and now we see so much more fluidity and a lot less pressure, and it's still there, but a lot less like heteronormative, like like sexual obsession, if that makes any sense at all. Like you
what
talked about like the shirtless Abercrombie models, and then it was like the perfect looking female with like women were in there and they like wouldn't allow people who didn't look a certain way to like that's like a perfect example of what that like late 2000s was kind of like. And it's so interesting because if you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, Taylor Lautner was like this really particular type of guy, very like appears to be very masculine. I'm using like quotations, and again, like really over sexualized, but it was like boy, girl, like very strict. And it's so interesting how the almost like the result, like the backlash of that or what came after that was this like beautiful blossoming of like, because now we say like, oh, the closest thing is Harry Styles. Like how amazing that this like very like I know he identifies as a man, but like very fluid in his gender and like very queer presenting man is like the new like Taylor Lautner. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah.
so different. It really is.
And it's so curious to think too that it's like it's funny that it's become Harry Styles in the way that it is, because even though it's like it's crazy to me to think now that like so many people who are really big fans of Harry were likely getting to the point where not all of them like grew up with One Direction music or are like in One
Yeah.
Direction at that time, when I was like, I think a lot of people of our generation are extra attached because of that. But I also see like so many younger fans that I'm like, well, you weren't listening to Take Me Home in 2011. Like that's crazy. But it's like, I feel like it's still relevant that it's like, even that time, like they kind of had like cute like boy band thing, less than like the Taylor Lautner sexy, but
Hmm.
like they were still kind of in as like younger artists. I feel like that place of like you and all your friends were like picking one, and it's like who's the one that I'm gonna
Hmm.
like? They're likable, they're cute, they're like marketable, they're still
Yeah.
kind of off that like sexualization of the boy band era, and he was able to like arise from the ashes of that into like a very different kind of celebrity, which is like
Yeah.
he has the album Sign of the Times, and he is very much a sign of the times, dare I say.
Yes, 100%. I completely agree. Let's change topics. Uh, Behind you, you have for the listener, you have a bunch of posters of different artists, and it's like a big blown up pictures of their faces. I would assume that these are artists that you really love and appreciate, and I'd love to just hear like who are some of your musical inspirations, old and new.
Oh man. Well, I have so many. So like I feel like when I was a young kid, like I grew up with a lot of like country and like Americana and blues. So like Emmylou Harris, Towns Van Zandt, Johnny Cash, Gillian Welch, Highway Women, like just a lot of music like that. I would say I'm really, really attached to and like feels like my childhood. And then growing up, like really was like connected to a lot of pop music, like radio hits, like listening to a lot of like Black Eyed Peas, Fergie, like Beyonce, Britney, like was into all that. And then when I really kind of like came, sort of started coming into my own music taste, I guess, where I was really starting to like actively seek out music and like actively kind of curate my own stuff and become more exploratory about it. Like hip hop has always been like one of the biggest ones for me. So Young Thug was one of the early artists. He's one of the posters on my wall that I really connected with, and he released this incredible album, Jeffrey, that was another like very early example of he's someone who's like been very comfortable like wearing dresses and like being into high fashion and like dressing in ways that were seen as gender fluid and like not even like caring what anybody thought or not even trying to market it in any way like that. And I came into his music and like trap music in general. So like Lil Uzi Vert and Playboy Cardi and Juice World, all like artists that were very influential to me, like Drain Gang, like Young Lean, Echo 2K, like Blade, stuff like that in high school, and like SoundCloud stuff that my friends were showing me in like our cars driving around. Like it was very influential sounds to me. Like I mean, as Kanye was like a huge one, Lil Wayne, like just all these people that I got really, really onto. And then now, I don't know, like I always kind of like gravitate back towards like music from that time. I feel like as like sort of late high school, like home, like just this kind of like early, very like formative time that like kind of evokes this playfulness and fun and carelessness while simultaneously caring way too much about everything. That like there's certain albums or like certain at like certain, not like it's not even specific enough to be a subgenre, but just like young rappers and like young very excited rappers with this one kind of energy. Like a lot of it like I'll see in like Atlanta, or like a lot of it coming out of like New Orleans, like just just like this really exciting energy that feels like young and like free and like connects to me in a way that I just like always reach back towards. So yeah, I would say those are a lot. Um, Lana Del Rey is Lana Del Rey. Like simultaneously, I found her in middle school, and she has just always spoken to me on a very deep level. I am fascinated by her career and her interaction with her fan base and her interaction with the spotlight. And I think her writing and her vision and her character are just so absolutely fascinating. And I just think her music is beautiful. So I have always been a big fan of her. And I kind of love that she's a little bit controversial. Like she's definitely said some stupid things that I would not align with, or think that she should have said. But
it almost makes her more like, I don't want to, I think it's so dangerous to say this like on a wide scale, but I think for her specifically, like it makes her almost more intriguing. Like I often like ponder the choices that Lana Del Rey has made in good ways and in bad ways. And I don't think I knew she was another artist that like in my Tumblr days, I feel like I mean, my show is about nostalgia, really, right? Like that's like kind of the base of the radio show. And I talk about how like no matter what music I'm listening to, it transports me somewhere to some time always. And like when I listen to Lana Del Rey, I feel like I'm 14. Like I had her is that the Off to the Races album? Is
yeah,
that what it's called? Okay. I had
that
that
was
on
also
vinyl.
I'm Born to Die, the one where she's
Yeah,
in the
Born to Die. Yeah, in the blue and the yeah. I had that record, and I just remember like playing it in my room, my little record from Urban Outfitters.
hell yeah.
12, you know? And I don't think I knew, because it felt like a vacuum at that time because my friends weren't listening to her, you know. I didn't know how absolutely massive she was, or like how big her fandom was, or like how much she interacted with other extremely popular artists. Like she's such a almost like an enigma. Like she's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's like I think you're totally right. Like it's both this very like transportive, nostalgic experience, and like I think she's always kind of drawn both like the music that she makes and her entire persona and iconography off like she is who she is. Like she's an imperfect person, that there is one her, and there like she is just very um unique and imperfect and confusing, and like it's a lot to chew on, and I respect that from a woman for sure.
100%. Um, I have a question for you. Are you making any of your own music right now?
So I do some like I do it sort of for my own. I like think I express myself through writing a lot, and I
Mm,
love it's like a very calming thing to me. I play guitar very at a very rudimentary level. And so I'll just like play old songs that I love from my childhood or ones that I know that I like to sing, or are pretty easy for me, and like really just enjoy that as like a way to sort of de-stress or kind of like reflect on something or let out some sadness or tamp down some happiness, whatever I kind of need to do. That is a very useful strategy for me that I've been very grateful for. But as far as making my own music, I have thought about it for a long, 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 long time. And I have many little like snippets of things. But I have not yet come to a place where I've brought it to any kind of fruition. Um, I think I would love to work with somebody, and I feel excited about the idea of possibly meeting that somebody who I would be able to collaborate with, or would kind of like be able to. That was one thing when I think about interviewing Jockstrap, like it was just so cool to hear the way that they collaborated with each other and like how they were able to build on each other. Like when, if Georgia is writing a melody, just song and like piano or something, or even just like humming something that she's interested in, and then like Taylor is maybe able to like he hears something, a certain like production technique or like a certain beat or like a certain synth that he would like underlay with it. Like um I think that kind of like creative relationship is really beautiful and like complicated for sure, but also definitely like buoyant in a way that like it encourages you to get more stuff done because you have that other person kind of like being the jetpack in your back. um but yeah, I think that I would love to create my own music, but I think I just don't have the technical skills to do it on my own. And I've never quite felt, I used to be a super like out there, like did theater and stuff when I was a kid, but I have a little bit, I like to write and be behind the words on the computer. I have a hard time sort of being up in public in front of people, whether it's public speaking or public singing, even karaoke, but I love karaoke.
Do you know, do you have an idea of the type of music you would like to make if you did, or would that depend on the person? Like, do you have a at least a genre that you're interested in? Just curious.
It would probably be kind of like sort of like ambient folk, I would say I would be
Love.
interested in. Like I have a lot of interest in like, I think it would be curious to find a way to like combine some of like the genres and sounds that I'm interested in that I hear to be kind of aligned, like whether they're
Mhm.
in hip hop or like hip hop production or in more sort of ambient or even in like country. Like there's little connections that I see that I would love to be able to kind of um have the tools to blend in a way that felt fitting to me. But I think, you know, the first thing I go to when I'm like thinking about or creating music is just like songwriting. Like that is usually what I'll find
Mhm.
myself doing, or like I'll get a melody stuck in my head, or like lyrics or like things that I want to express stuck in my head. And it'll be like a very cathartic experience to kind of get them out and like make something with them. Um, so I think that it would ultimately all come from that. And then the sound of it, um, I feel like I'm so curious about so much, like the sky would be the limit. Once I get my
Yeah.
hands on music and learn how to use it, it is
Yeah.
so much.
Love it. That's awesome. Hattie, can you tell people where they can find you and your writing maybe?
Yes. Okay. So you can find me at avclub.com. And then I have a portfolio. I am on Medium, hackcatherine.medium.com. It's a little wonky, but it's cool. But yeah, no, you can find me there. And I am on Twitter at Hattie Lindert. Throw me a follow before we all crash into dust on there, I guess.
Yeah, seriously. Hattie, thank you so much for your time. It like, I don't know, I've been smiling this whole time. I feel like this is what you're supposed to be doing, and it's so cool to see someone that you appreciate and admire doing the thing that they should be doing, if that makes sense. I hope that's not weird to say, but it's just like it seems so deeply what you should be doing, and it makes me feel like so fulfilled and so happy for you that you get to just like be doing it. It's so cool to me.
Oh, Dude, well, that means a lot to me. I struggle with imposter syndrome a lot, so that makes me feel very warm and seen and heard. And I feel the exact same way about you. I can't believe I'm here on your radio show that I read about in 7 days. It's crazy. Which is funny because I used to do some stuff with 7 days back when I was there too. And I
That's
wish I got to,
awesome.
but I and props to who did. It was incredible.
That's awesome. Thank you, Hattie. Thank you so much for being on the show. And we'll talk soon, right?
Well, soon. Yes.
FaceTime. We're gonna FaceTime.
Yes. No, we'll do it
Okay.
after do
For,
and a catch up.
yes, thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's kind of late and I was sort of all over the place, but I really appreciate it. And let's actually talk soon. Let me know if you're back in Vermont. We'll figure it out.
Yes, it was so good to talk to you, dude. I hope you have a great rest of your night.
You
I'll text
too.
you.
Bye,
Bye bye.
Hattie.